Because he made fun of Girl Scouts, he was let go from Men's Health. Dismissed from Stuff magazine for using dwarves to disrupt a business meeting. Following a sharp decline in circulation under his direction, his contract at Maxon UK expired without being renewed. Greg Gutfeld had been fired from every major publication he had ever led by 2006. He had been written off as unemployed by the media establishment. Fox News then called with an odd offer: host a show at 3 a.m., a time period so lifeless that executives joked that the only people who would watch would be nursing moms and speed dealers. Nobody anticipated his 3-month stay. Today, that same reject attracts more views than Kimmel, Fallon, and Colbert put together. Even though he never appeared on late-night television, he rose to become the unquestioned king of late night. However, it wasn't by accident that they went from serial failure to television domination. It required creating a cult following among insomniacs, meeting a Russian model in Portugal, getting fired multiple times, and completely altering the laws of American talk shows. We must go back to the beginning of the destructive trend in order to comprehend how a man who was unable to maintain employment for more than 2 years became the most watched figure in his time slot. On September 12, 1964, Gregory John Gutfeld was born in San Mateo, California. Jackie, his mother, brought up the kids in a Catholic home. Greg was a student at Junipero's Serra High School, a Catholic all-boys school that has produced baseball great Barry Bonds and NFL quarterback Tom Brady. In the middle of the 1980s, he enrolled in the University of California, Berkeley. This decision would have unanticipated consequences for a future conservative media star. He was not converted by the liberal atmosphere of Berkeley. He was repulsed by it. Later on, he would clarify that his exposure to liberals made him conservative, while his exposure to conservatives made him libertarian. He observed that the worst aspects of both groups had one thing in common: moralizing and instructing others on how to live. He had no desire to participate in the purity tests of any trib. Following his English degree graduation in 1987, Gutfeld secured an internship at the American Spectator, where he performed errands for R, the magazine's infamously challenging editor. Tyrell EMTT. He learned about the inner workings of conservative media from the experience. However, magazines didn't pay well, so Gutfeld started reading men's lifestyle magazines. He began his career as a staff writer at Prevention magazine, a health-oriented magazine, when he started abusing drugs and alcohol at what his co-workers called a prodigious rate. He would spend years living a party lifestyle. He finally made it to Men's Health, the go-to source for abs and fitness advice that ruled newsstands in the 1990s. Gutfeld became editor-in-chief in 1999. At 35, he was in charge of one of America's most prosperous men's magazines. Then he lost his job. Depending on who told the tale, the official explanations differed. Gutfeld had written articles making fun of his own boss, cat lovers, and Girl Scouts. He was deemed more hassle than he was worth by the parent corporation of the magazine. His career trajectory was described as both amazing and dismal by one media outlet. He repeatedly reached the top of the ladder before falling back down. But failure did not teach Gutfeld to be cautious. He intensified his turmoil. He then went to Stuff magazine, a magazine about ladies, technology, and all the things that young men were meant to be interested in. Gutfeld increased readership from 750,000 to 1.2 million, turning it from a mediocre title into a circulation powerhouse. By pushing boundaries that marketers accepted since the statistics continued to rise, he completely unhinged it. Then the event that would define his career in magazines occurred. What Gives a Magazine Buzz was a symposium organized by the American Society of Magazine Editors in April 2003. Gutfeld chose to respond to that query in a literal sense. Using a casting agency, he brought in 3 Shortland actors and told them to cause as much disruption as they could during the meeting. They loudly chewed their potato chips. They let their phones to ring over and over. While business executives attempted to speak, they engaged in boisterous discussions. They were expelled by security. The New York Times published the story. Gutfeld was dismissed right away. That's where most careers would have ended. He certainly appeared to. He would now be untouchable by any big American media. He had gained notoriety for the wrong reasons. For Greg Gutfeld, however, being dismissed from America was insufficient. He made the decision to banish himself to a completely different continent. In 2004, London gave Gutfeld a new beginning. It appears that no one in the UK was aware of the dwarf event, and the British edition of Maxim lacked an editor-in-chief. Or maybe they had and didn't give a damn. Anyway, Gutfeld gathered his belongings and headed over the Atlantic. He had to travel to Portugal for a company conference during his first week of employment. The publisher brought together editors from all across the world to debate strategy, and Maxim had editions in more than 30 countries. After checking into his hotel room, Gutfeld started to get comfortable. Then he saw the woman in the room next to it. Tall and dark-haired, Elena Musa was employed by Maxim Russia as a picture editor. Before switching to magazine work, she began her career as a runway model. She instantly attracted Gutfeld's notice at the conference in Portugal. Later on, he would characterize the experience as instant recognition. He just knew it when he glanced at her. "That's my wife." Elena didn't want anything to do with him, which was the issue. Gutfeld pursued her with what he acknowledged was reckless persistence for 3 days. The short American editor continued to show up everywhere she went, but she remained aloof, contemptuous, and disinterested in him. At last, he asked her out on a real date. "Yes," she replied. Between them, something changed. Elena moved from Russia to London to be with him in a matter of weeks. The speed at which the relationship developed would have appeared risky to an outside observer. They were married in a modest civil ceremony in New York after only 5 months of dating. There weren't many wedding pictures. Both favored seclusion over publicity. In his 2008 book, Gutfeld wrote about Elena and how, rather than hiding in their apartment and watching reality TV, she encouraged him to really enjoy London. She provided him with stability that he had never experienced in bars or magazine offices. However, his career would not be saved by steadiness. The outcomes of Gutfeld's time at Maxim UK were unsatisfactory. Under his direction, circulation decreased. The business decided not to extend his contract when it ended in 2006. He had recently been married, was 41 years old, unemployed once more, and had no clear future. The pair moved to New York City. As a fashion stylist, Elena started her own profession and eventually worked for magazines like Design Scene, L'Oréal, and Venice Magazine. 2017 saw her graduate from Parsons School of Design. However, both Gutfelds were beginning anew in 2006. Greg accepted a peculiar job that appeared to be career suicide. He started writing blogs for the Huffington Post. Everything that Gutfeld detested about leftist media was embodied by the Huffington Post. However, Gutfeld saw an opportunity to instigate trouble from inside, and founder Arianna Huffington welcomed conservative voices on her platform. His post gained notoriety due to what some described as inspired lunatic ridicule of other bloggers. He made fun of Arianna. He made fun of other contributors. Every comment area became a fight because of him. Andy Levy, another blogger, paid attention to one of those comment areas. After exchanging jabs, the two realized they had similar sensibilities. Sardonic, dark, and ready to insult anyone for a good joke. Soon, that virtual sparring would grow into something more important. Because someone at Fox News was watching while Gutfeld was irking. Liberals online. In late 2006, the call was placed. Fox News intended to start a late-night program. Did Gutfeld care? His reply was prompt and truthful. He had no money. He was willing to do anything. He was flown by Fox to meetings in New York. It was an odd pitch. The network sought to fill a void in viewership. The show was originally slated to air at 2 a.m., when the majority of Americans were asleep. Gutfeld joked that convicts, speed dealers, and nursing mothers made up the intended population. They received numerous letters from prisoners. Under the name Red Eye, the program debuted on February 5, 2007. Gutfeld anticipated meticulous planning and weeks of rehearsals. Rather, executives informed him that they would begin in 3 days. In the green room, the squad practiced. All participants, including the cameraman, were intoxicated. It was more like a house party than a television show. At 2 a.m., Red Eye made its appearance. After watching the first few episodes, Fox executives concluded that the material was too graphic for that time slot. They decided to postpone it till 3 in the morning, where fewer people would notice it and voice their complaints. Now, before his show attracted any viewers, Gutfeld had been demoted inside it. However, during those quiet hours of the night, something unexpected occurred. Red Eye gained a cult following. Every cable news convention was broken by the show's format. Gutfeld would use ridiculously over-the-top praise to introduce panelists. Pop culture, politics, and utter stupidity were among the topics covered. There was nothing sacred. There was nothing sacred. Fox News itself was frequently ridiculed. The humor was the darkest, most ridiculous, and unlike anything else on TV. As the show's ombudsman, Andy Levy, Gutfeld's Huffington Post sparring companion, joined. The chosen companion was Bill Schultz, a co-worker from the days of Gutfeld Stuff magazine. The chemistry between the three was improbable. The deadpan snark machine was Levy. Schultz was the endearing loser. Like a cunning ringmaster, Gutfeld oversaw the mayhem. Jackie, Gutfeld's mother, started to appear frequently on Red Eye. After explaining that the joke was that she was old, he offered her the title of senior correspondent. During the day, she was supposed to monitor Fox News and provide updates on events. She was always complaining about the women's too short skirts on screen. Other viewers liked those skirts, Gutfeld would reply. The mother-son bond felt authentic as it was depicted on camera. Gutfeld had been ashamed to present his parents to acquaintances when he was younger. As an adult, he discovered that those same buddies would rather hang out with Jackie than with him. Audiences were drawn to her straightforward genuineness. She encouraged her son in all of his endeavors, even when they were doomed to fail. Red Eye shouldn't have been effective. A performance at 3 in the morning. Topics picked seemingly at random, inebriated cameramen, and a lack of funding had no business drawing viewers. However, the ratings increased. Despite running in the middle of the night, the show started to outperform primetime cable news programs. Then, in July 2011, Fox presented Gutfeld with a more ambitious offer, The 5 Needed Hosts, a brand new daytime program. 5 commentators discussed politics and news every weekday at 5 p.m. as part of the format. Among those 5 would be Gutfeld. The 5 became well known. As the first non-prime show to rank number 1 in terms of both total viewers and the crucial demographic of adults aged 25 to 54, the program created television history. All of a sudden, Gutfeld was standing in front of millions of people rather than just thousands. However, he continued to host Red Eye 2 and worked both shows concurrently for almost 4 more years. The grind could not continue indefinitely. Gutfeld declared in February 2015 that he was leaving Red Eye to concentrate on a new endeavor. 3 a.m. The aim of the show had been fulfilled. Greg Gutfeld's ability to captivate an audience even when no one was paying attention had been demonstrated. Fox now wanted to use a real-time slot to see what he could do. The Greg Gutfeld Show debuted as a weekly Saturday night program at 10 o'clock p.m. on May 31, 2015. The format combined elements of a variety show with political satire. Gutfeld gave one-off speeches. He spoke with journalists. Comedian Kat Tim, who offered a libertarian viewpoint and quick humor, and professional wrestler Tyrus, whose imposing presence contrasted with unexpectedly smart analysis, were frequent panelists. While Gutfeld continued to appear on The 5 every day, the show ran on the weekends for 6 years. He worked non-stop to cultivate a following of devoted viewers who continued to watch his shows. Broadcast networks' late-night hosts seldom acknowledged him. A Saturday Fox News broadcast was not seen as competition by them. Then 2021 arrived. Fox News declared that the Greg Gutfeld program would change its name to simply Gutfeld and relocate to weeknights. At 11 p.m., the new show would premiere Eastern, in direct competition with Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, and Stephen Colbert. Failure was foreseen by industry observers. How might a news program on a cable network rival that on a broadcast network? How could a conservative comic draw in viewers who had spent more than 20 years favoring Jon Stewart and his successors? The response came rapidly. In terms of viewership, Gutfeld had surpassed The Late Show with Stephen Colbert by August 2021. Every night, the show attracted more viewers than any rival on broadcast or cable, averaging over 2 million. The man who began work at 3 in the morning presently controlled 11 p.m. The outcast was now king. The figures only got better. The Five and Gutfeld had an average of more than 5 million viewers at the end of 2021. With 2.5 million viewers on a single night in October 2022, Gutfeld had its highest-rated episode to yet. Those figures could not be met by any late-night program. Fox relocated Gutfeld to 10 o'clock p.m. in June 2023. Eastern. As a result of the change, the show was no longer technically a late-night competitor. Critics claimed that this was dishonest and that at 10 o'clock p.m. programs that air at 11:30 should not be compared to the show. The terms didn't matter to Gutfeld. The audience continued to expand because he cared about them. The popularity of the program was indicative of bigger shifts in American media consumption. With hosts portraying conservative viewers as the adversary, traditional late-night programming has become more politicized. Gutfeld had another idea. While Democrats took the brunt of his comedy, all parties were assailed when they merited it. More significantly, unlike well-executed broadcast productions, his show had an authentic feel. He was previously referred to as the most dangerous man on television by the Weekly Standard. In contrast to other media figures, Gutfeld's work was truly subversive. It was a stink bomb dropped into every American movie theater, nonprofit boardroom, faculty lounge, and mainstream newsroom. He had found his audience by being himself a troublemaker who was fired from every respectable job he ever held before landing somewhere that valued chaos rather than by following trends. No one, not even Gutfeld, could have guessed how the later parts of his story would turn out. Longtime viewers were taken aback by the news he revealed in December 2024. Greg Gutfeld became a father for the first time at the age of 60. Mira, his daughter, was born to him and Elena. Gutfeld made the news during an episode of The Five in which he made light of his daughter's remarkable lung capacity and his intentions to teach her 3 languages. After 20 years of marriage, no children had been born. Then, Gutfeld became a first-time parent at a time when most men his age were considering having grandchildren. Suddenly, the private man who hardly ever talked about his wife on camera had a whole new side to his life. His ongoing domination in the workplace coincided with the announcement of the baby. In its competitive set, Gutfeld continued to be the most watched program by 2025. He routinely surpassed 3 million viewers on television, while his closest competitors barely managed to achieve 2 million. Someone the industry had written off as unsuited for television had changed the late-night world. Part of the story is revealed by the contrast with his rivals. According to reports, producing broadcast late-night shows costs about $100 million a year. Only a small portion of the resources were used by Gutfeld. His program never attempted to equal Colbert's or Fallon's production levels, instead embracing its more modest beginnings. His outlook on failure had turned out to be prophetic. He maintained that the best thing that could happen to somebody was to be fired. Many believe that their career is ended when they are dismissed. In actuality, you always wind up somewhere better. He had repeatedly lived by that concept, using each termination as a springboard rather than a dead end. Only in hindsight did the pattern become apparent. With each dismissal, Gutfeld moved closer to a setting that would allow his unique skills to flourish. The goal of Men's Health was conformity. Things desired sanity. Maxon UK desired an increase in circulation. They didn't want a provocateur who disrupted industry gatherings by hiring dwarves. Particularly the 3 a.m. Fox News. Gutfeld was finally able to be himself during a time period that no one cared about. Elena mostly stayed out of sight during his ascent. She kept up her fashion career, making sporadic appearances on his Instagram but staying away from his TV shows. She avoided the spotlight, which is precisely why their love endured. Gutfeld utilized his connections at Fox News to assist with the evacuation of Elena's mother from Lviv to Poland during Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. One of the few times his personal and professional lives came together in public was when he released the reunion footage on television. When Gutfeld was sitting broke at a Chelsea pub in 2006, no one could have guessed that he would be in this situation at the peak of his career. From that foundation, the man who jokingly said that his initial audience was made up of tired parents and criminals had constructed something enduring. His audience consisted of Fox devotees as well as more and more independents and even Democrats who thought the other broadcast options were boring. One conclusion can be drawn from the numbers. Over 3 million people watch each night, and over 5 million watch both shows together. Supremacy of the ratings, which compelled CBS to consider whether The Late Show could go on. However, the figures don't explain why it was successful. That pattern of failure and reinvention holds the key to the solution. Gutfeld never made an effort to fit in with the industry's expectations. Because he was challenging, pushed boundaries, and refused to control his inclinations, he was fired. He eventually discovered a position where those same attributes were assets rather than problems. From breastfeeding moms and speed dealers to the largest late-night television audience, Greg Gutfeld demonstrated that occasionally the 3 a.m. reject emerges as the unchallenged monarch. By discovering a market that desired precisely what he had been providing all along, rather than by altering who he was.